executive session. We are now on to item 3, the accept agenda changes. Do I have any recommended changes?
Yes, I recommend that we add 2 additional resolutions to our agenda.
Any other questions on that? All right. Any other recommendations? Great. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby accepts the agenda as amended. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nays? Abstentions? Thank you. All right, now we move on to board president's remarks. I want to begin this evening by congratulating our neighbor high school Haldane on their Blue Ribbon Award. That's a very prestigious award. We're very happy for them. Announcements were in the paper, so it's exciting to see. I also want to update the board on some administrative things regarding the search for our new superintendent. We will add this as a discussion item probably at the next meeting, but I do have some proposal materials both from BOCES and from the search company we used last time. This is just a jumping off point to get us started. I'll be sending all that information out to the full board so that you can start to review it, come with questions, so that once we have a discussion next time on the agenda, we can start to really think about what this process looks like and how we want to move forward. Because it is already October and we want to start getting out there with it. Then my next thing is on transportation, one of our favorite topics. There is now a form, thank you, James, and thank you, Joe, on the website for anyone who has a safety complaint regarding transportation. You can fill it out. I know we talked about last time, maybe in a time limit for all complaints, but we're going to leave this open just in case people have complaints throughout the year, winter changes, things like that. So take the time to fill out that form. If you have further concerns beyond that, we do ask that you put them in writing and we will share those with our attorneys. Beyond that, I hope transportation continues to run smoothly. With flooding, winter upon us soon, all of that. So that's all I have. Do I have any questions from anybody? Go ahead.
So are we going to communicate that to the parents that there's now this form?
So it went out in the newsletter last week, I think, but we can continue to keep it in the newsletter.
Sure.
And I've taken over the newsletter a few weeks for now.
Oh,
So
okay.
it is in there.
Great.
Yeah.
So yeah, we can call it out separately too if we need to. If anybody needs to find it. Do you have any other questions? And keep us moving along. Appreciate everyone's patience. Next up, we have board communications and presentations. First, we have the Green Ribbon Award Initiative with the chair and Sarver. Welcome.
So Rachel and I have been working on this and piecing it together for basically since I started back in October. We first started talking about it and going through it. I shared with Jocelyn the last time that we met that when we added in all of our responses and then all their questions and all the content that we needed.
Nobody got that.
Want to guess?
Yeah, I already know. So make other staff. Guess how long?
Yeah, how long do you think it is?
None.
Kent, you got a guess?
150.
850.
Oh.
So just with all the data that we needed and everything that they asked for. So that's why, you know, Rachel and I we've met quite often and just gone through a lot of the data. And it doesn't, you know, Rachel sent me just an email even today. I was like, hey, can we pull it back and we want to add something else? So we're constantly, you know, Rachel has done so much good work that we're constantly thinking of things that we want to add and everything. So the application's not due until November, but we're in very good shape right now. So that's the logo of the Green Ribbon Schools. right there, the one on the left. And I'm just going to kind of take you through the three pillars. I get the boring stuff, Rachel gets the exciting stuff. So I'm going to go over pillar 1 and 2, and then Rachel will take over and talk about pillar 3, and then we're going to talk about if we win, what does that look like, and what does that mean? So pillar 1, reducing environmental impact and costs. And I'll say that due to Rachel's work, our pillar 3 is there's, you know, in my previous district, we won 4 times, and it was, we were pretty even across all 3. We were pretty even across all 3 pillars. Here at Garrison, we've done tremendous work in pillar 1 and 2, but our pillar 3 is just so extremely strong that it's really carrying the day. But we've done some really good work with pillar 1 and pillar 2 as well. So pillar 1, like I said, it's reducing environmental impact and costs. I tried to encapsulate, but just even looking at it, you can see it takes up a whole slide, and they want you to really separate it out and look at the data of every single one, and they actually ask you to measure the garbage, measure your greenhouse gases. There's a whole EPA tool that they want you to use called Portfolio Manager that I worked with Joe's office, Genevieve, to pull all the bills so that we could get the right graphs and everything else. So a lot of the great work that happened over the last several years, and especially the last 2 years with the bond, is encapsulated in here, and the board and the community should be very proud of all the work that has been done. So moving away from oil to heat pumps, that is a huge undertaking, as everyone here can attest to, and it's still something that, because we're one of the first, we're kind of still working our way through. We do a lot with recycling. Mr. Anito and I talk about recycling way more than we probably should, but we talk about just making sure it's getting picked up, and the custodial workers have done a fantastic job as far as separating things out. The pollinator garden, I don't want to steal Rachel's thunder, so I'm going to have her talk about that more in pillar 3. The occupancy sensors, I can tell you, and I think at the last board meeting we all experienced several times. So move around as much as you can so that the lights actually stay on. Most of the lights that we have now are LED lights, which are very energy efficient. On most of the faucets that are in public areas, there is an automatic shut off where you push down, and then because of the pressure, it shuts off on its own. We have the refillable water stations. We switched from, as far as like weed whackers and that kind of thing, from gas powered tools to electric tools. All of our paper is from renewable forests. And one thing that the district bought just last year was no idling signs, and they're posted in the front of the school. So it's interesting. Lately, I've been kind of excited because I see more and more electric cars kind of pulling up. So I don't really have to worry too much about the idle. So pillar 2, improve the health and wellness of schools, students, and staff. The school has a wellness committee and a safety committee that I sit on with Ms. Emig, Nurse Melissa, as well as different staff members, and we talk a lot about the health and safety of the school and go through a lot of it. And they have changed it since the first time that I submitted back in 2016 for Warwick. Now it's they really are encapsulating also the safety and security of students. So a lot of the security that the district has invested in, we can get points and a higher score because of it. So these are just some of the things that we have done recently. So the sensory pathway, that's something that we talked about in the application. Just the strong SEL program, DBT, dialectic behavior therapy. We're looking to show screen agers and just about screen time. this winter, hopefully in January. Again, I don't want to steal Rachel's thunder, but we did talk a little bit in Pillar 2 about the school forest. That's an area of growth that we are trying to go through. Rachel's going to talk a little bit more about that. And then the recent just different safety enhancements that we've done, anywhere from badges to cameras, anything like that. So I kind of alluded to it before, but to explain it, every single area, every single question, there is a point value. Because I've been through it enough times, I actually know the point values, but they don't really share it with you. I just know where the points are. And so sometimes we have a little bit longer answer, just to make sure that we can get credit for those points. So I'm going to turn it over to Rachel.
All right, hi. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm the coordinator of environmental ed here at GUS. And Pillar 3 is all about integrating environmental literacy and curriculum into the daily learning experience across all disciplines, which is pretty much my job description. So it made answering this really easy. So again, the primary focus is on, there's this gap that a lot of students experience outside of Garrison, where we don't have a forest, where they experience nature as this separate entity on field trips, and that's like a one-off, and then they go back to their regular learning in the classroom. And the goal here is really, I'm trying to get into every grade, well, I'm in every grade level, in every content area, so students in social studies can still see connections to nature. Students in math can still quantify nature. So this is really the focus of making it interdisciplinary, not building a new curriculum, but building an environmental lens into existing curriculum. Partly because teachers don't need to sacrifice any time, but also so that students can see connections between the content in the classroom and the curriculum. We've done a number of civic action and community events in the last year, mainly culminating in the Youth Climate Summit, which was the first ever pre-K through 12 Youth Climate Summit anywhere. We invited 7 other schools representing 5 districts, middle and high schools, and students participated all day and at the evening event as well. There were workshops led by guest experts in the field on various topics within science. And then every single kid, pre-K to 12, led their own long-term research project that they presented on at the community event and to their peers. It was really special. There are tons of links if you want to see more. There's a link to the keynote presentation last year where we had 10 4th to 8th grade students leading the keynote speech on their own climate stories. I also connected 5 of our 6th and 7th grade students with a local journalist, and they reported on the event. And then that article was in the Highlands Current, which was really exciting to get 6th and 7th graders published. The pollinator pathway was a huge project. Mrs. Stevenson, I'm so glad you're here because she co-led this project. This is with the 3rd grade, and a lot of 5th graders were there too. Because in 5th grade, they were studying pollinators in math. They were quantifying how much pollinators affect our agriculture, how much we eat. And then in 3rd grade, students were studying mapping. So we put those together where 3rd grade students were analyzing the migratory patterns of monarchs. We talked about them being endangered. And then we converted our garden, which was previously maintained by Land to Learn, and there were talks of taking it down. We converted it into a pollinator garden. Number 1, for the content reasons, but number 2, because it's pretty self-sustaining. Once the first 2 years are behind us and we can get weeding under control, it's really, they're all perennials, so they kind of take care of themselves. And then the pumpkin project you guys are actually already familiar with, but this was one that I talked about in the application because it was so interdisciplinary. It had students in 5th grade. A couple of years ago, we had this sulcata tortoise named Pumpkin, and we were trying to make sure that Pumpkin's needs were met. So we got a reptile expert, we got 2 engineers, we got 1 engineer and 2 architects. And they all came in and led students in designing what a safe and reliable habitat for pumpkin would look like. We hit a ton of math standards. Then they communicated that. They wrote a pitch to for a grant. So that hit their language arts standards for persuasive writing. And then obviously this was a civics project, right? We were thinking about the world beyond ourselves. We were thinking about illegal pet trade. And so that brought in a social studies element. And then we were thinking about habitat and this organism's needs. So that was talking about science too. So it was like a month and a half long and the students were so invested. So that was the project I focused on in the application. These pictures, actually I think all of them are from, all of them are from the Climate Summit. And they're all different grades presenting their research, the research was all on content related to sustainability and the environment from pre-K to 8. The other aspect of Pillar 3 is taking learning outside of the classroom and making sure that it's connecting with the world beyond the classroom. So we've really utilized Gus green spaces, field trips to the forest for every single grade. Unfortunately, this year we've had some issues with that due to transportation, but we're hoping to have, moving forward, just as many field trips as we did in the past. Because the forest is really an extension of our classroom and it's such a valuable space, and the students love getting outside. It's amazing. Every time we go, there's a parking lot area where I always pause and we just stand and close our eyes because it's so rare. We're in like the hustle bustle of school, and then we just get to go outside and be in our school forest and we just get to be. And so we close our eyes and we have all these mindfulness activities, and it's really special. The kids, it's just so rare to have 25 kids quiet, and they're all really into it because they crave it just as much as we do. So in addition to the school forest, we have field trips all over the Hudson Valley. We have field trips to Teatown, Constitution Marsh, and all of these field trips are, again, an extension of the learning that takes place in the classroom. A major component of Pillar 3 is STEM. It's engineering content is taking place within the school, and I teach middle school STEAM to 6th, 7th, and 8th. The thing we wanted to add to the application was the PTA is talking about bringing apples into the school lunch program to add some nutrition, which is talking about Pillar 1, 2. Okay, I didn't write this one. So that would really enable students to access more nutrition. And my 6th graders in STEAM right now are trying to build a composting program. We used to have a program here. We still have some of the infrastructure. We're definitely in need of more and expansion. But in addition to building a composting program, in response to having more fresh food, we would also do a soft plastic recycling. So we're really wary of the waste that we are putting out as individuals and as a community. Because this class is really just, it's my favorite class I've ever taught. I've been a teacher for 10 years and I've never loved a class more because it's so low stakes and it just gets kids aware of the world around them. So they get to just think about their place in the world and take action without the stress of like, we gotta hit these standards at a certain time. I wish every teacher could teach a class like this because it's really fun. In addition to STEAM, and in STEAM, last year there were a number of projects that students presented at the Youth Climate Summit. Like we had these 7th graders working on biomimicry to address the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So they were thinking about how can we take designs from nature and apply them to real world problems that the UN is trying to address and engineer solutions. And some of the solutions students came up with were really inventive. One of the groups wanted to address Christmas tree waste, because after Christmas, everybody gets rid of their trees. They wanted to create a Christmas tree collection, compost what they wouldn't use, extract chlorophyll from the pine needles, and bear with me, it's a step-by-step process. Create these edible tablets because chlorophyll has a number of nutritional components in it that have been proven to help fight liver cancer. And then they wanted to separately they want to create a water bottle that would be like a one-stop shop where you can, like on the trail, fill up water. It's a natural filter mimicking how plants filter water. And then put the chlorophyll in from the Christmas tree. We need to hone this one a little bit more. But they had a lot of big ideas and they saw connections between all of them, which was really special. Citizen science is a big component of what we do in the environmental program. Thank you to Jocelyn for kind of spearheading that. Every second and fifth grade student works with Jocelyn and Jason to measure the diameter and circumference of the trees in our forest to see how much carbon they're sequestering over time. We measure the same trees every year to track the growth, they track the data collection, and then we're planning to publish this eventually. I work with a lot of other citizen science apps like iNaturalist, Seek, things that get students using the technology we have available to them to, quantify the world around them. And last but not least, professional development for teachers. So it's not just that I'm here, that we did well on Pillar 3. It's the collaborative nature of the teachers that is really why this program is so successful. And this interdisciplinary nature of the program is what I'm leading professional development for teachers on, is how to take their existing curriculum and then flip it through a new lens so that they're still hitting the same standards that they're required to meet for testing, but they can do it in a way that students access nature, students understand this content in relation to real world issues. And again, it can bridge the gap for them to take that civic action component. That's Pillar 3. I love my job, thank you. And thanks for this application. I think we have a lot of really good examples to show the state.
So big question that I've been asked a million times. So if we win, what happens? So I just thought it would be a good idea to kind of step the board through the next steps after we apply. I actually saw, I just got back from NISCUS and saw some of the people that will be rating our application. So of course, kind of made sure that they knew we were applying again. So, and talked to them, everything. We have to, one thing that's not up there is, like I said before, we have to submit by November. We've already actually submitted, but we might pull back and add a little bit more work that Rachel has been doing, like the composting, and then submit one last time. The notification of the award is usually late winter or early spring. There is official notification, and then there's unofficial notification. So unofficial notification, usually sometime after Christmas break, I can usually call up and they'll say, well, you didn't lose. And so they basically give it away. In the spring, March or April, there will, the district and the board will decide who wants to go up to the state. We're recognized at a Board of Regents meeting. They have these huge leather chairs that they sit in, and then we sit in these small chairs behind them that's fairly big enough for us to sit in, and then they recognize us at that meeting. So the award is a 2-level award. So the first level is the state, and then the state can then recommend that we're recognized by the federal government. Every time that I've gone to this, I would say anywhere from a half to 2/3 of the states actually move on to the federal level. There are some states that don't submit year after year after year. It's when you're recognized at the federal level, it is not all the states. It's, like I said, anywhere from a half to 2/3 of the states that go. And every state can only recommend 2 districts. If they recommend 2, then one of the districts has to be 40% free and reduced or more. So that's kind of a caveat. So after the Board of Regents, that's usually when they submit to this feds. New York always submits to the feds. Their rubric is one of the toughest in the union. So they usually think if you win the New York award, then you're going to win the federal award. There's really not much difference, which is different than other states. Sometimes they don't move them on because they know that they won't pass at that. This might sound weird or whatever, but they don't give you access to that logo. You cannot use their logo on any of your official letterhead or anything else until you win the award, and then it must have the year, and there's other things, and they give you a whole branding package. In the past, we bought flags, pins, that kind of thing. It's still at the school's expense, but it is prestigious and nice to do. In the fall of 2024, usually board members, administrators, teachers, there's, like a small group from every district that goes to Washington, D.C. It's a 3-day event. Of course, the last day is the actual ceremony, which is fairly short. The 2 previous days are pretty exciting. It's a conference, but there's very select people that are going to be there, and it's very hands-on, and you get to talk to experts that normally you would never have access to. So scientists that are working with the federal government on hydrogen cars, other sustainability efforts, and they're all around Washington, D.C. It's usually you spend a half a day here, half a day there, that kind of thing. So it's really giving the district a chance to really kind of see what are the next steps that they want to take, and really get access to different people. They usually arrange for you to meet with like Senator Schumer, or your representative. So that is a guaranteed time that you can go and talk to them as well. So it's a really exciting time. So it's not just going, getting the award, and then coming back home. The award is like what you see at the high school level. It's that pressed wood, and then just a little piece of metal. That's all that they really give you in a letter. But the experience that goes along with it is pretty amazing, just because of the experts that you get access to, and you get to also hear other schools and what they're doing, and usually pick up a few great ideas from it.
You had a question.
A ton of questions, actually. I want to, first of all, congratulate you guys for what you've done, and Rachel, thank you for what you brought to the school. Rachel sent me an excellent podcast that she did on environmental education for kids, which ought to be available to everybody. But I want to suggest that there's a pillar 4 that for some reason it doesn't get brought up in these in the way that we're teaching our kids about this issue. And I'm going to take the climate part of the issue, because that's our overarching environmental challenge. It has a history. It has a history that began when Dr. Hansen at Columbia told us that there was a real problem in 1988. And what happened after that is fascinating and horrifying and occasionally heroic. But in the same way that we teach our kids about the Civil War and about the New Deal and about race, there is a story, a historical account that our kids ought to be aware of, because it is the single biggest issue that we're all facing. And, after Hansen delivered his conclusion about the threat of climate in 1988, the fossil fuel industry undertook $1 billion propaganda campaign to deny it. That's part of our history. And the fact that so few Americans are familiar with what the fossil fuel industry did to deny, delay, distract, keep our mind, continues to, about this issue is a tragedy. And it's a tragedy which is not just it's happening today. It's a tragedy because it's not, they have a Republican presidential campaign, and they asked about climate change, and what you got was it's a hoax, which is amazing. Okay, and part of environmental education, in my view, ought to be pillars 1, 2, and 3, and pillar 4, which ought to be an opportunity for kids to learn what happened when the scientific community brought this to our attention in 1988, and where we are now as a result of it. I'm not suggesting a partisan political agenda. I'm saying that all points of view should be expressed, but to do it would be as if you're talking about nuclear energy, nuclear power, and not without mentioning we dropped the bomb on Japan. There are several problems that happened in the nuclear field. There's some good things that have happened. But I'm just astonished that schools and such as Garrison, that our kids don't know this stuff. And they should know. That's my speech for tonight.
Thank you, David. Do I have any other questions or comments for James or Rachel regarding this fantastic initiative that they've undertaken? I don't want to say I agree.
So I just want to compliment Rachel for her work and also compliment all of the students for all the hard work they put in learning this material and being able to have data that they're presenting to be an applicant in the school.
The last thing that I'll say is that, like I mentioned before, Rachel has done a lot of great work, but it's really the whole school district, the board that has kind of gelled together to get to this point. And Joe's office, I sat with Joe several times and tried to get everything down that I possibly could. And, it's really a group effort by everyone in the school district. Like Jennifer said, it's not only, it's the teachers, it's the students, it's Rachel, it's the business office, it's the board, it's everybody that's kind of come together around this that makes this possible. So thank you.
Thank you. It's wonderful, and thank you, Rachel, for taking the time out of your evening to come and share what's actually happening with the kids. And it's important for all of us to see, we're gonna get in budget season in a few months. What are we funding? This is what we're funding. And I think that's really important to start making those connections to how, not just funding, what is the staff we're funding? What are the programs and how they're all connected? So it's really exciting. I hope we have some good news winter for the district.
David, I wrote that down. That's a really good idea. There's why you know. Not go again. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to keep us moving. All right, next up on our board communication and presentations, we have, again, the discussion of a possible special district meeting. I'm going to introduce it the same way as last time. So, right, the first item is discussion, second item is the authorization. At this point, so we looked at this last time, this is talking about whether we want to have a special meeting, which is a vote to authorize the transportation within 2 miles. We've had time to have our questions answered by council. Has advised us that this is something we need to do. It's really a question for us as to when we do this at this point. And so right now, we have the ability, with the timeline Dusty has put forward, that includes notices, it will be included in the fall newsletter Dusty is putting together, to accurately communicate in time for a December 5th vote. We can also look to put it off until we have our budget vote. So that's really the item that's before us tonight. It's talking about whether we want to do this now or wait till spring. So I wanted to open it up for discussion to hear everyone's thoughts on this now that we've had time to review this issue and hopefully clarify all of the actual legal components. Anyone have any thoughts? They want to jump in and share? Dan, go for it.
I would share some thoughts. So I do appreciate, I had a number of questions that Chris, our council, was able to answer about what constitutes voter approval of the 2 districts limit. She provided some information that made it clear that I think a budget vote does not qualify as approval. You need a supplemental referendum or proposition. So I agree. I think, we need to move forward with a vote. I am concerned about trying to do a vote, when it's going to be a low turnout scenario or in the middle of the holiday season, not middle, but a period of time when there may not be as great participation among local residents and parents. So, personally, I think in addition to just the overall, difficulty of getting people to the polls in general, it would be helpful to pair it with, anything else that we're going to be the budget votes. I just feel like we're most likely to get a solid turnout and that, parents will have the chance to get out and vote. So that would be my thought on it. I know that there's, some risk if we wait, but, it seems like the risk is, maybe fairly minimal.
I'd like to respectfully disagree with Dan. I think it should be very separate from our budget vote, and I would like to see us move forward and do this in December. So that it doesn't muddy the waters if this is impacting the budget. Because this is something that happened, that we're doing in this year's budget. I don't want people to think how they vote will impact next year's.
I do agree and see the point that if we separate it, and that had been my thought. I see both sides of it, honestly, but because of last year's budget conversations and to getting connected so closely as to, can we save money by doing this? Well, if it's really a safety issue, it shouldn't be tied to the budget. So when we go to plan the budget, it should be a requirement that's already set forth by the voters that we absolutely have to do this. These children require transportation. And right now, it has a very nominal cost. I mean, it's basically an hour's worth of bus driver time. It costs us less than one high school student. So, and to me, that's not, making it a budget issue. It's making it really about, this is a community without sidewalks. But I also see, and having explored a little bit, that there's not a huge risk to waiting. I think the risk is more that it becomes part of the budget conversation when it really doesn't need to be.
I think, I'm not concerned about the cost aspect, but I am concerned about, what happens if in December this gets rejected and then we have, we're sort of thrown into a fairly chaotic situation where a decent number of students lose their transportation within 2 miles shortly after we've implemented new routes. Obviously that could happen next year if we do it in May, but I think we're more likely to get turnout of the people that are invested in that if it's on a pre-scheduled type of day where, we're going to have low turnout either way, but at least more likely to have decent turnout later on.
Any other thoughts to jump in here with?
I agree. I'd rather have it not be a special election that costs us a little bit of money, in a long time. When we can pair it in May, the cost of the election in December is going to be a quarter of the cost of like this driving our kids the extra 2 miles. I mean, it's a lot of money, kind of, in comparison to what we would save if it went down. And I am scared if it could go down, given our transportation woes so far this fall. I also think it is linked to the budget, just like last year's proposition was linked to the budget. So I don't think we should say it's not, because it kind of is. There's a dollar amount in the resolution, so it is linked to money. And so I don't think our voting community would be confused by that. I think they would understand. And we've talked about this now since February. So I think a lot of our voting community understands the issue.
I wouldn't keep it 2 separate. Do the vote in December. Also don't want to cloud this with the budget conversation in the spring. We don't know yet what that conversation is going to be. We do know that we need to do this, and I don't anticipate that it's going to be an issue to have this pass. It's not a budget issue, it's a safety issue. That's how it should be.
But the way the resolution is written, it's written as a budget issue and not as a safety issue.
Because all we do is allocate funds. Yeah.
So I
We
just feel like
can't, I know we did explore, and we will not become a safety corridor. That was part of the conversation last year, if you remember, from the budget. That's not going to be possible for us on 90.
So how would we convey to our voting community that it's a safety issue when it's not a safety issue according to how the resolution, the proclamation is written?
Don't we also routinely have propositions that are non-budgetary in May or June. I mean, there's a budget vote, obviously, but they're often,
Contracts. is what you're
contracts,
looking at,
the
yes.
authorization for the board to enter into a long-term contract with Haldane,
Yes.
Valley.
So there are contracts and then authorizations to remove funds, and those are budgetary, we fund out of reserves, things like that. I will say having been to the audit committee earlier today, I'm less concerned about, issues when they have a budget. So, that does give me pause as well, to say maybe we hold off on this. My big concern last year was that it was going to be seen as, we can save money by different ways. Instead of looking to redo the routes and include those students.
I see the argument on both sides. But I'm more inclined, I'm leaning towards doing it in December. Simply because, and I wasn't part of the audit meeting today. I'm very excited.
Sad about that, weren't you?
I'm so sad. So sad. So I cannot wait for the presentation. I am very excited to hear the good news. But I think that the more information we have going into budget season, and preparing for the vote in May, the better. And this would give us that piece of information. I don't want to see kids losing buses in December. I think we would have to work with the school, with our partners at the PTA to we can do it, but to give them all the information so that they can communicate effectively what this really is. Because there's the line of the resolution on the piece of paper that we check yes or no. But what we want is our voters to be educated. And so for them to go in there with the full understanding of what this is actually saying, even when we can't put specific wording into it.
We can do those posters like we did for the contracts at the polls too, that sort of explain what this is.
What's your view on this? What's your view on this?
I would like to separate it from the budget conversation, and I agree with Courtney that knowing going in, I'm less concerned about our budgetary conversation right now, but I do think separating it out is helpful. There is a cost to holding a vote. I completely see that. But I think it is useful to say, and there's ways for us to communicate that this is just an authorization we need to have, and we want to make sure that it's on the books. I don't think voter turnout is going to be an issue among parents. My bigger concern is voter turnout when it's linked to the budget. I think opponents come out at different times for that.
Remember that we were planning on also including this in the fall slide.
Yes, and this would go out in the fall newsletter, which we're going to make happen. The timeline would be right before Thanksgiving. And then that is one of the reasons for this date, so that the newsletter hits, and then it's not too long after that newsletter that the vote would happen. And I think it would be time to educate people, but I see your point too.
But we as members of the board will be doing that. So we're relying on
the district communication
and our parents to do it when they also have to do it again. Still
I
vote
see
for
that.
something. Yeah, I still vote
Yeah.
for keeping it in May, so we do not have to go through a whole vote.
For sure. That's one point we don't all have to, different things, we don't have to come to agreement on this, so I want to get a pulse of where we are at.
Yeah.
And I completely respect that. But it looks like, David, do you have thoughts on this?
Very, in the middle of this.
I guess I would just also ask what, and this will be an issue regardless of what the vote happens, but if it gets, if voters reject transportation within 2 miles, do we then begin a process at that point?
It
Or
immediately
stop?
stops.
It immediately stops.
So in May it would be the same thing. It's not the next year, it would be.
Right.
But if we did it in December and it was voted to stop, we could then put it up again in May.
You need 2 months in between. I've read about districts where it
Right, yeah,
happened,
so-
and that's like, they had to wait the 2
Yeah.
months. I do think, I mean, you're looking at the risk analysis, like, is this going to be shut down by someone for that, for May? And
Yeah.
that I haven't found a clear answer to.
Yeah, I mean, I think if somebody tried to challenge it, it would be. But I think, yeah, I'm just worried about sort of the roll of the dice of a very low turnout election. Asking people, I think it's not a light thing to ask people to take time out of their day to go vote. You know, it's hard to get people there in the best of times. First week of December, I think, is a hard time. So that's my concern, but you know, those risks apply in May. I mean, it could get tied up in budgetary considerations that voted down. But yeah, I would just, you know, I feel like there's more uncertainty to me in a very low turnout election when people might not show, but maybe it'll be a good turnout.
Do you have a clarified opinion on it, David? I moved to, I think at this point, we have, unless anyone's decisions have been swayed or you want to talk about any items further, I don't want to spend all night talking about this. So I think what I would like to do is go ahead to the next item and we'll hold a vote on that. But I do appreciate your positions, and I agree with that. So that brings us to the authorization to call special meeting of the qualified voters of the district and approval of proposition. Okay, we're up here. Take part back. Be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby calls for a special meeting of the qualified voters of the district to be held in the gymnasium of the Garrison Union Free School District on December 5th, 2023, from 7 a.m. until 9 p.m. for the purpose of voting on the following proposition. Proposition 1. Shall the Board of Education be authorized to transport all students of the Garrison Union Free School District, regardless of the distance they live from the school they legally attend, effective immediately, which additional transportation currently costs $16,200, and be it further resolved that the board authorizes said proposition to appear on the ballot of the special meeting of the qualified voters on December 5th, 2023. May I have a motion, please?
Can I have one more
Yeah,
question?
I'm gonna do that. Let's get a
Okay.
motion on the table and then we'll go back to questions. Absolutely.
So moved.
Okay, questions?
Just the language of the proposition.
Sure.
Regardless of the distance that they live, is that what?
That means we can go to 0. So like, because a lot of districts, and this is somewhat we talked about, like
Right.
they say like half mile. We will authorize, or 1 mile out.
But would it be more accurate to say within 15 miles? Because,
Well, we have to transport by law 2 miles to 15 miles. So it's only the distance between 0 to 2 that we're talking about.
right, but regardless, so just reading this without any, knowledge of it, I would think regardless of the distance that they live could be unlimited, 30 miles, 20 miles. So I would be concerned about,
Or they have to be within the borders of our district to legally attend our district.
but do voters, I mean, I don't know that every voter is going to know what the,
This is what the distance, right?
So a tuition-based student who pays our NRT
They're not eligible.
They're not
for
eligible.
transportation anyway.
Yeah, regardless of whether they live within 2 miles or out of district, obviously.
but could we say within the district regardless of the distance or something to that effect?
We can look at amending it. I wouldn't amend anything that we vote on tonight without speaking with council,
Sure.
because they
Yeah.
provide all the resolutions. So I would want to ask them before we do that, but we
Yeah.
can make a note to look at the language
That's fine.
afterwards.
Yeah,
To make
I just
sure.
wanted to be, assuming we
As clear as
proceed, very
possible.
clear that we're not talking about unlimited or, excessive distances.
It's only, and yes, it's only to say that it doesn't matter if you're 0.5, 7, 0.6 away from the school.
Or if it really only applies to 0 to 2, if we could say, children within 2 miles, something. Was that?
I said 2 or less time.
Right, yeah.
Now, my next question then is, if we're gonna ask Chris to amend the language, do we need to, can we put it to a vote or look at the language again? Maybe look at a vote. Or people, can we vote on this with the agreement that we will then look at the amended language? Yeah. Okay. Sure. Okay. Do I have any other questions before, now we have a motion on the table on this or any other things? I do think that should also be in the material we communicate as well. What we didn't talk about previously was that, do we want to go to 0 or 0.5? That I recall, but we're putting this on as everybody is entitled, regardless of how far you live. There's very few students within the walkable distance. I feel very close. Right. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and move to a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nays?
Nay.
Abstentions? Thank you. All right, now we're gonna move on to public comment. Public comment is intended for members of the community to speak openly and voice concerns in accordance with policy 1510 of the Garrison Union Free School District. Any person wishing to speak shall comply with all provisions of this policy. Comment about specific school personnel or individual students is a violation of board policy. Concerns regarding students or personnel should be discussed privately with the superintendent or appropriate administrator. Comments should be limited to 3 minutes, and speakers are asked to conduct themselves in a respectful manner. The board will listen to comments but will not engage in dialogue. Any necessary follow-up will be noted and provided through the appropriate channel. Members of the public wishing to comment during board meetings are asked to place their name and town of residence on the sign-in sheet. Commenters will be invited to the podium to address the board.
Good evening. First of all, I want to say, David, I agree with you completely and about the Pillar 4, and you introduced us as a library teacher to program The Power of Big Oil. It's a frontline PBS show available online. It would be terrific for students to watch and for grown-ups too. So thanks. I'm here tonight to say those magic words, feasibility study. A group of grandparents and parents who would love to see the Garrison board and the housing board explore the possibility of a feasibility study that could be funded by a state grant to look at the possibilities, the strengths and weaknesses that might happen if there was a merger between the districts. And we think that could produce some useful information that would help both districts going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Is anyone else wishing to speak tonight? All right. Then I go ahead and keep moving then. Next, we're going to go to acceptance of minutes. Be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District does hereby accept the minutes of the regular business meeting of September 20th, 2023, and the minutes of the September 27th, 2023 special meeting as presented. May I have a motion, please? Second. Thank you. Do you have any questions or comments on the minutes as presented, please? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nays? Abstentions? All right, now we're on to the audit committee report. So the audit committee met earlier today at 6 o'clock with our external auditors. Those new members, this is my favorite time of year. So we had a great meeting with them. They will be back to present the audit report to the full board on the 18th. Just, it's okay if I share some of it.
Sure.
So the exciting part that we're starting to see is there is a significant, about 11% in our undesignated reserve fund balance, 1.4 million. So we are much higher than we anticipated. This is due to a number of factors, which we spoke about in the committee meeting. But I want to thank Joe for fighting for FEMA. It's getting the money in. you know, it's the county covered some costs for us last year. It's looking for all those opportunities and then being really mindful of staying on budget. So I congratulate the board on that, because I think as we continue to be mindful of staying within those lines and having accurate lines, we're going to see the results of it. So I was pleased to see that. Other committee members, we have Dan and Jennifer there, who graciously agreed to join my favorite committee. So if you have anything you want to add, you're welcome to jump in. But the full, do you want to, does the board have an interest in seeing the full report in advance of the 18th?
The abbreviated one?
Well, we can give you the.
There'll be some changes to the slides. We asked for a couple of additional things. Just if you want to peruse it, so we can come with questions for our external monitors when they go look at it.
We posted right before doc meeting.
Yeah, we can make
And
sure.
we'll
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll get it.
I mean, all I'd like to add is it just shows the kind of work that the business office is doing to keep their eye on the environment.
All right, now move on from that, but it was fun.
Sorry.
Why. It took me so long to figure it out, and I love that the auditors spent so much time with me figuring it out, learning the audits. I think it's a great way to understand the school district distributed audit reports. So for anyone who wants to look at our neighboring school districts and learn more about them, I highly recommend their audit reports are published. You can go read them, and it gives you a sense of what they have in fund balance, where they're spending their money, things like that. And then it can help us inform our decisions too, by looking at what our neighbors do. Just if you have extra time on Friday night. All right, now we move to the approval of CSE, CPSE recommendations. Be it resolved, Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District approved the Committee on Special Education, CSE, and the Committee on Preschool Special Education, CPSE recommendations and student placements. May I have a motion, please?
Second.
All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nays, abstentions. We'll move on to the personnel consent agenda. Be it resolved, Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District, upon the recommendation of the superintendent, does hereby approve the items of the personnel consent agenda as presented. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Now I'm going to pause here and break these
Can I
out.
just ask a question? Should, item D be pulled out as that's not the recommendation of the superintendent? It's the recommendation of the board?
You can pull it out. Okay. We'll vote on that separately. So then we're do I need to read that again? So we're gonna look at voting together on B, C, E, and F. So we'll talk about those first.
Just to clarify the two that we added in.
Yes, so what you're looking at for E and F is the approval of the memorandum of agreement with the Garrison Teachers Union. James, do you want to speak to any of these, or do you want me to rattle on? All right.
Go.
So the first one is compensation for teaching assistants, setting up the structure for that. And F is for Michael Roman, the math teacher, to amend his tenure time. So he was a long-term substitute for 2 years, was hired, those years count towards tenure. And then, I don't know if you just want to speak to B or C. B is non-instructional appointment, and C is per diem substitute. I want to pick up the teacher
Already
names
there, already.
have been working.
Phelan Foley, has been with us for almost a year now. I've seen her grow tremendously professionally, and she's been a great addition to the overall staff and has worked with some of our toughest students and really done just a great job.
Okay, and that's the teacher aide appointment. And then we have the per diem substitutes. If anyone had any questions, we all have the resumes. So let's see. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and vote on, unless there's any questions on B, C, E, and F as presented. Right? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nays, abstentions. All right, we have pulled out D. So this one, we're gonna spend a little bit of time on. I'm gonna read it and then we'll talk about it a little bit. Be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby appoints Carl Albano as interim superintendent of schools commencing October 10th, 2023, until such a time full-time superintendent is chosen, but no later than June 30th, 2024, and approves the agreement dated October 4th, 2023, and further authorizes the board president to execute said agreement. Thank you for pulling this out. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All right. So with this one, I want to thank, first of all, Jennifer and Dan. We're part of our informal group that led the interim search. We reviewed a number of candidates that came in. We conducted interviews. Some of the criteria we looked at was we were looking for prior experience as a superintendent in New York State. We felt that was very important for an interim coming into this job and keeping stability. And we really wanted to stay within our budget lines. I think the board has made a commitment to staying within our budget lines. So there was a limit to what we could pay an interim because the budget was approved. With that, it became clear that we should reach out to Mr. Albano and see if he would be willing to come back, though he has officially retired as an interim. Most interims are retired. So instead of losing him to another district, where he would be an interim, we've asked him to work for us for the year while we conduct a search. Personally, I think this will bring great stability to the district and allow us to really focus on what we're looking for in our next superintendent, which should be a very community-wide, well-vetted process that definitely takes months. An interim search does not have the time or really ability of this committee to do such an in-depth search. Jennifer and Dan, I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add to this process.
I would just echo your comments. I think, I was impressed overall by the caliber of the candidates that we received, and by the number of candidates. I was impressed by the interest in the position, but as you said, ultimately, for budgetary reasons as well as the stability that Carl can offer, I think it's makes a lot of sense for the district.
I think it would be, I agree, I think it would be hard to step into an interim position with no superintendency experience. But it does give me great hope for our search this year. I think we're going to have a really exciting pool of candidates.
I just want to add that I appreciate that after we went through the process and we realized we didn't really have the right match this time, that Mr. Albano was willing to work with us to meet our budget requirements and serve in this position while we do a complete search.
Yes, that's important to point out. We're getting him below market value. And I greatly appreciate his commitment to the Garrison district. All right, do I have any further comments or questions? I'm going to go ahead and move to a vote on this. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nays, abstentions. No point. And I also want to thank James for stepping into this for a week. I really appreciate all the time and energy in addition to everything else you have for this role. So thank you so much. And I didn't mean to put you on the spot tonight.
It's fine.
All right, I'll keep us moving then. Request for approval to access technology equipment Chromebooks. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby approves the following items to be accessed. Chromebook asset. No, okay, as presented. May I have a motion, please?
So
Thank you. Talk about this briefly.
I would just like to say, I think that our students are doing an unbelievable job of actually taking care of the Chromebooks because in my tenure here, which has been almost a year, we've only accessed 3 Chromebooks. So they've done an unbelievable job. The rest of the Chromebooks we were able to, there's a few cracked screens that we were able to deal with, but for the most part, these were just older Chromebooks that finally gave up on themselves. And we had one Chromebook where our motherboard split in half, but that was really the only one where it was actually a mechanical thing. So they really are,
Simultaneously, just give it up.
we'll leave it at that. So, but so these, the students are really doing a great job taking care of the devices, and it really definitely helps as far as the budget is concerned.
Good to hear. All right, any questions on the Chromebook? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nays, abstention. We move to the second public comment of this evening. I'm not going to read my paragraph again, but it does pertain still. If anyone wishes to speak, I have my section here. I'm going to close public comment again, and we are going to move on to board member comment. Oh, Justin, can you hit the screen again? Thank you. Now it is your turn to if you wish.
Thanks, James, for serving. I got a lot of communications, I felt like, from you and as acting, so it's nice, as a co-parent. Great. Oh, and I wanted to suggest, since we're making this newsletter, if there can be some very short reference to reminding, the broader community about the types of exemptions or tax relief that they could, apply for. Because it's a way that we're going to reach people who we never normally reach, right? Because it'll be mailed out. So I don't know how, Dusty, I'm sorry to add something to the newsletter, but I don't know what the language should be, just some reminder.
Maybe even language with links to the website
Or just
just
a link on the
direct
website,
them.
or a call.
Well, you could mention when and where they need to apply. It's probably the best thing to do, because they have to apply by a certain deadline in order to get included in the tax roll.
Yeah.
That's probably the most critical piece.
Just while we're on it, is the deadline the same for the veterans exemption?
Yeah, I think I think they're all the same,
Okay.
but we'll verify.
Thank you. All right, David.
Oh, just to say that, I think that Carl staying is so good for the morale of the school and for the morale of the community. And the fact that he wants to stay here for the rest of the year, having retired, is just wonderful. It's really good. Goodbye.
Anything? Dan? Brittany? Okay. And
I just want to thank Sarah, Jennifer, and Dan for going through all the interim applications that we got. That was hard work. So I appreciate that. And James, thank you for stepping in and for all the work that you, Rachel, and everyone have done with the Green Ribbon initiatives, for the rest of stuff. Thank you.
I have no further comment this evening, so we can end with that. Okay. Be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby adjourns the regular meeting of October 4th, 2023. May I have a motion, please?
So you.
Thank you. Everyone stay here. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nays, abstention. We're moving executive session. Lawyers first, every year. Curious. That was the fact.
It was very
That
efficient.
was, it was really efficient. Yeah. They also used to do it first. I've never seen a lawyer talk so much.